All right, so welcome to our Elevate Sports meeting. And in this meeting, I want to cover a few things, mainly the agenda of the who, the what, the why, and the how. And so we're going to go over all of these. I'm going to say it pretty concisely, and then we'll get into a Q&A, which will not be recorded. So if you have any questions, just save it all to the very end, write them down so you can be concise. We'll put them in the comment section as we go. So let's start off with the who. So Elevate Sports will be available for grades 5th through 8th grade. So we're giving that option for really a middle school, middle to late elementary to middle school through middle school option. Now, 4th grade is going to be somewhat of a bubble grade, and that's going to be determined based on the family. And so we are offering 4th grade for regular Kids of Grace sports. So if you want to just keep doing what you're doing with the 4th grader, that's more than fine. If you're interested in something a little higher level, and I'll explain what that means in a minute, but if your kid is a blossoming athlete and you desire something more than simply one night a week, they will have the opportunity to play up, if you would. 4th grade will have the ability to kind of be the pivot grade in that. But definitely for 5th grade through 8th grade, that's going to be the primary target. So the who are families who desire to pursue sports but want a Christ-centered alternative. So the idea of pursuing sports is we want to make sports an option, much the same way that studying music would be an option for families or any other pursuits. A lot of the sports that we offer are great and are fun, but if you really want to learn the game in a higher level, learn plays, learn nuances, you really need at least one practice a week. Ultimately, you'd probably need more, but really to keep it balanced, one night a week is at least required. And I use the example of baseball, for instance. We saw this quite a bit in our experience in this last season with Kids of Grace sports, with blossoming baseball players who want and desire to learn the game, but there is an element of nuance and feel for the game that you can't really get with one night a week. And so as you grow in that knowledge and pursuit, what we'd love to do is provide that option, that Christ-centered, discipleship-driven option, where you can learn the nuance of the sport. And just a classic example, the role of a shortstop, for instance, in baseball and softball, what role they play in the game itself it's a hard one just to learn in an hour and a half a night a week. And that gets complicated. Whereas during a practice, when you're running scrimmages, you're running drills, you're seeing the game played out and fleshed out, you start to develop those instincts. And that's what we're really looking to. In much the same way, if you're trying to play the violin or learn a piece of music, you need to practice and get into it more. That's what Elevate Sports is looking to provide options for families in that arena. So that's the who. Moving forward now to the what. We are going to be a Christ-centered and discipleship-focused and league where kids can grow in their skills and competition. So we're going to break this down piece by piece. Christ-centered. Our goal is that in word and deed, Christ would receive the glory. And we get that from 1 Corinthians 10:31. Also that it would be discipleship focused, that our goal is to support the church in making disciples. We get that from the Great Commission, go into all the world and make disciples in every nation. Our goal is that sports would be a means to an end, that ultimately what we're doing on the field and on the court would produce disciples. And we get that from our Chalk Talks, from godly coaches who are intentionally pouring in not just simply the skills and knowledge of the game, but ultimately the Lord and ultimately Christian worldview into everything we're doing. So that's going to be a high priority in how we're doing this. And ultimately as well, we want this to be competitive and skillful. And we get this from Colossians 3:23, And whatever you do, do with all of your heart, for you're doing it for the Lord, not for man. And our goal is for those who desire to learn and compete in sports to be able to grow and flourish, so that they can do it with all their heart, with all they have. They can pour into it and not be held back. And what we don't want necessarily is for those who want to progress in sports and to play at a higher competitive level to be penalized by the lack of competition. We want them to be able to play with all their heart and not necessarily be asked to refrain because things are getting a little too competitive. Now, can competition be taken too far? Absolutely. And that's where the first 2 points really play into this. We want this to be Christ-centered and discipleship focused. And if those two are properly in place, then the competitiveness and the skillfulness, I think, will follow through just harmoniously. And so they'll be flowing together, because I do think that this is something that is in and of itself biblical. Paul himself used a lot of athletic metaphors, right? Running the race to win the prize. You know, he made several boxing references and fighting the good fight and beating the air and things like that, as we see in his letters to Timothy and so forth. So there is a reality of sports not necessarily being intrinsically wrong to be hyper competitive. It needs to be funneled and used the right way. So we believe that it can be Christ centered and discipleship focused, and therefore bringing high competitive and high skillful abilities. So moving on, our targeted sports will be girls soccer in the fall, with flag football for the fellas in the fall, followed by girls and boys basketball in the winter time, and then girls softball and boys baseball in the spring. Now, our goal is to add to this. Volleyball is high on our list. We really desire to have volleyball be a competitive sport. The catch is that volleyball, it requires quite a bit of team effort, and we want to build a solid foundation on that. So be looking for day camps and things of that nature for volleyball before we get into a full-blown league. That's something we're hoping to launch soon, even as early as this year, whether it's a class through our academy or what have you. We are looking to launch volleyball, and we're also looking to launch track as well. And both of those will probably start at the club level and work its way up as we develop a good foundation. But those are heavily targeted, and we're open to whatever the Lord has. If he opens up other doors and opportunities for other sports to play, we're definitely looking to pursue those. So this is what we're leading in with. And the reason for these specific 6 sports or levels is because we've done these to a certain level, and we know where we can build off from successes and learn from failures on. And so these are the ones we're going to lead in with for Elevate for this next upcoming year. However, we would love to add more and take away what shouldn't be there. So these are the targeted sports. Moving forward, the why. And these are kind of the dare I say, the posts of why we're doing this. And the first is to create disciples, plain and simply, like we said before, to fulfill the Great Commission, to come alongside churches and really build the kingdom of Christ and help the next generation know and understand who Jesus is. So create followers of Christ. That's key number one. Number two is to redeem the time and the industry. As many of you know, sports is especially youth sports, is a billion-dollar industry. Not that we're trying to make a buck, but we're trying to redeem the time and industry. We would love to see a alternative option where kids can play competitively while still retaining that Christian discipleship, Christ-centered focus. It hasn't been done very often, and certainly not in the Portland metro where we're located very successful at all. So that's something that we're looking to do, and to do it outside of a exact school, private school element. there's a lot of others. You can attach yourself to a school. We're looking to create our own league that is independent of other things, and ultimately to have as much fun as possible. At the end of the day, this is a pastime. Baseball has been famously called America's favorite pastime. Basketball is a famous pastime. It's a great way to have fun. And that's what we want to do. We want to engage with these kids in a way where they're able just to have fun and enjoy the game without losing their minds, without losing their souls, without getting caught up in all of the competitive nonsense. We want to have fun, and playing basketball, playing baseball, playing football, playing these games is fun when done at a high level with adequate rules in place, with proper instruction and proper coaching given and during a practice time. It can be a blast, and we want to allow kids to have that opportunity. The how, a league of our own. So we're going to train coaches and refs. That's going to be a high priority, a shift, if you would, from what Kids of Grace Sports has traditionally been, where it's been essentially coaches calling the game and coaches kind of learning on the fly. We're going to look to invest into this. And so we are putting money where our mouth is. We are bringing on staff that's going to help facilitate this at a full-time capacity, and really look to train coaches and train refs. Now, not necessarily train them in the X's and O's. We hope that will be done, but we also hope that they will do that also on their own, and they'll come into it with a reasonable amount of preparation and preparedness. But what we also want to do is train them in how to properly disciple. We're going to give them more opportunity for chalk talks and that ability as well. What we're also going to do is have teams practice regionally. So we're going to be looking to target different courts and different fields for those weekly practices, which leading into for this immediate season in the fall will be on Tuesdays, and we'll have the locations. The first one solidified. We're going to have a location in Lake Bible Church in Lake Oswego as an option for the field sports. But we're also going to look to branch that out geographically to meet the needs and locations of those who are playing, so the teams can be generally regionally located. So we would love to have different leagues, different teams in the league located regionally, and that'll play out as we unroll this in the next few weeks and months. But that's going to happen. That's the goal. And initially, we have a field booked, if you would, for practices at Lake Bible in Lake Oswego. But hopefully, we're looking to get a few more as the teams and the league grows. So we'll also have games centrally. So the games will be centrally located. So the practices will be regionally based. The games will be centrally located. What that means is we're going to kind of all come together and play in a central location. Now, as the league grows, that may turn into 2 locations, but initially it's going to be one location where they're playing the games. And this year, it's going to be in Wilsonville Memorial Park under the lights for the football, and we're going to have a special field designated for the Elevate Sports for the girls soccer as well. And so that's going to be growing in that. The games will be centrally located, and it's going to coincide with Kids of Grace Sports. So if you have youngers that want to play Kids of Grace Sports, it's not going to conflict. You're not going to have to drive in 2 different spots for your Friday night games. So that's going to be a nice, convenient, all-in-one deal. So it's, still under the same banner for that purpose. We'll have assessments and tryouts. We don't plan on having cuts. That's not a priority, but we are going to assess who should be on what team for the balancing of competitive nature. We don't want to have one team stacked. So we're going to approach this a little differently than, say, just filling out a roster based off friends and based off general signups. It won't be necessarily at random. The teams will be built for the sake of competitiveness. And so there will be a tryout, there will be assessments. Now, regarding cuts, if someone just shouldn't be at that level, hypothetically, then we would have a conversation lovingly with the family and parents. And this is mainly around the fourth grade. Fifth grade, you'll be in, but if you want to play up, and really you'd be benefiting more from playing with Kids Grace sports, and i.e. with playing time and all that, that would be a conversation we'd have. And ultimately we would work with families however fits the best need forward. But that also brings up the question of playing time. Just to preemptively answer that question, our goal is to have the kids have fun, and no one has a lot of fun riding the bench. However, we are looking to have winning a game be a priority at some point. And so what we're leading in with is that within the last final 2 minutes, the coaches will have the opportunity to play to win the game, ultimately stacking the roster appropriately, filling the court. Now, the goal would be that playing time is prioritized throughout. And so we'll be working with coaches on that, just to ensure that kids aren't riding the pine the whole time. But ultimately, we do want winning a game to matter and be a priority. So that is going to be part of it. And we're going to have unique teams, schedules, and games. So what that means essentially is we are going to create a league that would present itself as a metro intramural league, where we have it's our own thing. And so we're gonna have our own teams, and we're gonna establish those teams preemptively. And so based off registration, and based off the fields and stuff that we get, we're gonna have different teams established going into the games, which will happen. And all of the game schedules already documented on the website. If you go to kidsofgrace.com/elevate, you can see where the games will start. So there'll be a time for practice and a time. So the way we're going to set it up is one initial assessment on the first Friday. That's gonna be an assessment day, and then we're gonna have one full week of practice, and then one practice, and then we're gonna start games. So games will start fairly early, all things considering, but we'll have at least a few practices under our belt to go into those games, and then practices throughout the season for that. And that's all we have for the presentation. And I'm going to lean hard on questions if you have it. So we're going to stop the recording here.